The room smells like dust and expensive paper, leather-bound folders on polished oak. You sit at the edge of the conference table, your fingers curled around a paper cup of coffee that's already gone cold. Across from you, your brother lounges back, like this is a formality, just a brief checkpoint before heading off to whatever suburban fantasy he's curated for himself. The lawyer clears her throat. She's efficient, polite, detached. Her voice slides easily into the legalese listing asset breakdowns like reading out grocery items. She doesn't look at you, not until the line that matters most. And the estate home account's possessions are to be left in full to Matthew Green, their son. You don't blink. You don't shift. This isn't a surprise. This is just the final stamp on something they made clear your entire life. You were the other one. Matthew adjusts his tie, though it doesn't need adjusting. His lips twitch into something that might be called a smile if it weren't so damn condescending. That's what they wanted, he says, like it's some cosmic truth, rather than a choice made with full selfish intent. You nod. One slow dip of the chin. Of course. The lawyer keeps reading. A few generic phrases about sentimental items. Jewelry your mother barely wore. A coin collection your father only touched when guests were over. None of it is yours. Your name is mentioned once, almost as an afterthought. With love to our child who chose their own path. You want to laugh. Chose. As if independence was rebellion. As if distance was something you invented to hurt them, not something they pushed you into with 1,000 little slights that never felt big enough to scream about, but always cut deep enough to scar. The meeting ends. The lawyer offers a tight smile, clearly hoping you won't ask any questions that might make the room awkward. You don't. You stand. You shake her hand. You even shake Matthew's hand. His grip is firm, smug, like a man who just got everything he thinks he earned. I'll take care of the place, he says. Keep it in the family. You almost reply, what family, but decide to save your breath. Outside, the sun is too bright. The pavement glares. You slide on your sunglasses and walk to your car with the kind of practiced calm that looks like peace, but feels like walking through fire barefoot. You sit behind the wheel, grip it hard, breathe once, twice. Then the laugh finally escapes, dry, bitter, involuntary. Of course they left it all to him. You drive aimlessly for a while. Not home, not anywhere. Just enough to feel like motion might shake the rage loose from your chest. But it doesn't. You end up at the edge of a park. Somewhere you and Matthew used to ride bikes as kids. You remember scraping your knees on the gravel path and crying alone while he rode ahead. He didn't stop. You limped home, in silence. That's the story, isn't it? They always assumed he was the leader and you were the wanderer. That he needed support, and you needed to figure it out. He got structure. You got silence. He got second chances. You got lectures. And when he failed, and he did, they said, he just needs time. But when you stumbled, you always were the difficult one. You sit there in the car watching the trees sway in the wind and try to feel grief. But you don't. What you feel is something heavier, older. Grief is for people you miss. What you feel is recognition. This was never going to end any other way. You were never the golden child. Never the safe bet. You were the one who left. The one who didn't move back. The one who didn't call enough, didn't smile enough. Didn't let yourself be molded into their idea of good. So they wrote you out. Not with malice, not even with anger. Just with indifference. And somehow that hurts more. You try to trace back the exact moment you became less than. Not unloved because they'd never say that out loud. But unseen. Unchosen. It wasn't a single event. It was the accumulation. Like slow drips of water carving into stone. Moments that didn't seem monumental when they happened, but together they built a mountain. Your brother got gold stars for breathing. You had to explain yourself for existing. He forgot birthdays. He got forgiven. You forgot to call on Mother's Day once during finals, and your mother didn't speak to you for a week. He got his first car at 16, a used sedan wrapped with a red bow in the driveway. You got a pat on the back, and instructions to ride the bus. You're more independent, they said, like it was a compliment. Like independence wasn't something they'd handed to you instead of support. You grew into your own life out of necessity, not rebellion. You stopped asking for help because help always came with strings or worse, guilt. And they praised you for it. Called you strong. Called you resourceful. Convenient praise for someone they'd quietly decided not to invest in. The funny thing is, you didn't notice at first. Kids don't count the inches of warmth they're missing until someone else walks in from the cold and gets a fire built just for them. But over time, you learn the choreography. You stopped sharing good news because it never landed. When you got promoted at your job, your dad said, "Oh, I thought you'd left that place already?" When you bought your first apartment, your mom said, "That's nice, but do you even want to settle down in a city like that?" They always made your achievements feel like detours, like you were dabbling instead of building. But Matthew, he could land a mid-tier sales role and they'd act like he'd just been knighted. You think of the Christmas when he couldn't afford gifts. Your parents told him, "It's okay, we understand." You, on the other hand, got a passive-aggressive email the next day when you sent your presents late because you were working overtime to meet end-of-year deadlines. They told you Matthew had a harder life, that he was trying his best, that he deserved a break. Deserved. That word still rattles in your skull, because the will didn't just hand him the house, or the money, or the keys to a life you helped build by being the one who never asked for more. It handed him that word in writing. He deserved it. And by omission you did not. You stare at your ceiling that night, replaying every family dinner where your chair felt like a borrowed seat. Every joke about how you were always so serious, so sensitive, so different. You wonder what it would have been like to be celebrated without suspicion, to be asked what you needed instead of what you could offer, to be chosen first. But that never happened. Not when you won your first writing competition in high school. Not when you got into your top choice college. Not when you paid off your own student loans without ever once calling them for help. You built everything yourself, and now you're being punished for it. That's the part they don't say aloud, but you hear it. You're fine on your own. You don't need this. He needs it more. Maybe they think need equals worth. Maybe they think love should go to the one who demands it most. But you were taught to survive without asking. So they let you. They made you the strong one, and then resented you for it. You turn over in bed staring at the half-packed boxes near the door. You came back for the reading of the will thinking maybe there'd be some sliver of acknowledgement. Not in money, not even in objects, just something. But there was nothing. No letter, no small keepsake, no sign that you were even part of the goodbye. Just a legal line to let you know they remembered your name. You get up. Pull out the old family photo box from your suitcase. Flip through the images like forensic evidence. There's your brother in every frame, front and center, arms spread, smiling like the world belongs to him. You're always off to the side. Half smiling. Half seen. Sometimes not pictured at all. You stop at a photo of you both at the beach, summer of '99. You remember that day not for the sun or the waves, but because you cut your foot on a shell and bled into your sock the whole ride home. No one noticed until dinner. That's what it was like being you, bleeding quietly, hoping someone might notice. But they didn't. And now they never will. The last time you spoke to them wasn't some cinematic farewell. No final moment laced with wisdom. No apology wrapped in a wavering voice. No poetic closure. It was a phone call, ordinary, uneven, echoing with all the things you didn't say. Your mother had called. Not to ask how you were, of course. She was just checking in code for wanting to update you on Matthew's latest crisis. Your brother might have to sell the car, she said, her voice thick with concern. It's just, he's been struggling so much. And you know how hard he works. You remember staring at the clock on your wall, the second hand ticking louder than her voice. You were in the middle of preparing for a presentation that might land your company's first six-figure contract. You'd barely slept. You hadn't eaten. And here she was asking if maybe you could send him a little something just until he gets back on his feet. It wasn't the first time, and it wasn't a request. It was a test. You took a breath. Mom, you said, steady but tired. You know I'm not in a position to fix his mistakes. There was silence on the other end. Then a long, disappointed sigh. It's not about fixing anything. It's about family. You've always had more. He needs help. You looked around your apartment, the cracked tile in the kitchen, the chair you'd found on the street and reupholstered yourself, the stack of invoices on your desk that said otherwise. More. You swallowed the words you wanted to say, that you'd sacrificed everything for this more, that while Matthew had safety nets, you had sharp edges, that more came with solitude and bruises no one ever asked about. But instead you said, I can't. Another silence, sharper this time. I just wish you were more like him sometimes, she said. And that was it. No thank you, no goodbye. Just that final twist of the knife. You never told her that sentence replayed in your mind every night for a month. You never told her it was the reason you didn't call back. You never told her how much of yourself you silenced just to be someone she could maybe respect. They never called again. Not when your business hit its first big milestone. Not when you moved into a place with your name on the lease and sunlight that actually reached the floors. Not even when you were hospitalized with pneumonia for 3 days. Something you didn't tell anyone because who would have come? And then one day your phone buzzed with a message from Matthew, call me. It's Mom. That was the first and last time he didn't sound smug. You didn't cry when she died. You didn't cry when your father followed 6 months later. Grief for you was not about what was lost, but about what never showed up in the first place. The funeral was a blur, an exercise in pretending. Everyone in black reciting memories like stage lines. You stood beside your brother, stiff and hollow. People patted your shoulder and said things like, she was so proud of you both. You almost laughed. Proud. They didn't even know what you did for a living. Your mother still told relatives you worked with computers. Afterward, you sat alone in the car suit collar tied around your throat and wondered how many people go through life craving love from ghosts. The truth. You mourned your parents long before they died. You mourned them every time they dismissed your joy. Every time they turned your quiet into weakness. Every time they looked at you and saw someone who could carry the burden, not someone who shouldn't have to. You gave them so many chances to see you. They never took one. And now there was no more giving left in you. Not even your name. The house looks smaller than you remember. Isn't that always the way you grow and they stay the same? Except it's not just your height or your bones that changed, it's your perception. You see it now for what it really is. Not some sanctuary of childhood, not a vault of family memories. Just a place where favoritism was served in side dishes and silence was passed around like salt. You park across the street and just sit. The porch light's on, even though it's noon. Matthew probably forgot to turn it off. Eventually, you cross the street and walk up the steps. They creak under your weight. One of the planks is still split from the time you tripped on Halloween dressed as a pirate with a too long plastic sword. You were 6. Your mom laughed when you cried. Don't be dramatic, she'd said. You knock. Even though you technically still have a key, you never use it. The door opens. Matthew stares at you for a second, then steps aside like he's letting in a distant relative. You made it. You glance around as you step inside. Same dusty floral runner. Same worn couch with the dent where your dad used to sit every night after work and sigh like the world owed him a prize for getting through the day. The air smells faintly like lemon cleaner and something older like stale memory. I wasn't sure you'd come, he says, shutting the door. You shrug. Didn't think I had a choice. Lawyer said you should be here to look through the stuff. See if there's anything you want to keep. You nearly laugh. Keep like there's anything here you'd want to cling to. Like the old china or your dad's tie collection could somehow fill the gap they left unspoken. He leads you to the dining room where several boxes are stacked. Labeled. Neat. Your childhood sorted into cardboard. You walk over to one marked photos. You open the top. Snapshots from birthdays where you were a prop in your brother's spotlight. Group shots where you're barely centered. A school play you starred in with your name spelled wrong on the back of the photo. Matthew clears his throat. You okay? You don't answer right away. Because honestly, what does okay mean here? I'm fine, you say, though your voice doesn't sound like yours. He leans against the doorway. They really thought this would be easier if everything just went to me. You turn. Did they think that, or did you tell them it would be? He blinks. What's that supposed to mean? You step closer. Not threatening, just clearer. You always had a version of the story to give them. I left so you got to write the script. They listened to you because you were here. I didn't lie, he says too quickly. You raise an eyebrow. You didn't have to. You just had to leave things out. He doesn't deny it. You pick up a framed photo, the two of you at your parents' 30th anniversary. He's in the center glass raised in a toast. You're standing off to the side holding the camera that took most of the photos that night. You never even got a thank you. Matthew sighs, dragging a hand down his face. I didn't ask for all of it. No, you say. You expected it. The words hang there thick and undeniable. And then quieter, more honest, and they gave it to you. Because they never really believed I needed anything. You say it without anger. Just fact. You turn back to the box and find an envelope tucked at the bottom. Not labeled. Unsealed. You pull it out and slide the paper free. It's your handwriting. A letter you wrote to your mom in college. A birthday note, maybe. Or an update from your first year away. You read the first line and remember it instantly how you mailed it with a photo from your dorm room, proud of the life you were carving on your own. You asked her to visit. She never did. But she kept the letter. Your throat tightens. Because that's the thing, isn't it? They didn't love you loudly. But maybe they had moments where they tried in their own broken way. You fold the letter back carefully. You don't take anything else from the boxes. You walk through the house once more, stopping at the doorway of your old bedroom. It's a guest room now. Neutral bedding. Bare walls. Like you were never here. That feels right. You walk out without saying anything else to Matthew. He doesn't follow. You don't expect him to. The door closes behind you with the softest click. But it sounds like a chapter ending. You're halfway down the front steps when it hits you. It's not the house. It's the narrative. It's the version of you that lived there, not the actual you that they never bothered to update. Frozen in time as the one who pulled away the difficult child, the selfish one who never came home for the holidays. Matthew was always careful to keep that version alive. Not with lies, he's not creative enough for that, but with omissions. Little ones stitched into conversations like embroidery. We don't hear from them much, he'd say, or, they're doing something out west, I think. Shrugs passed off as concern, silence masquerading as helplessness, and it worked. Your parents didn't question the story because it made their lives easier. It made your absence palatable, gave them a way to feel wounded without confronting the reasons you stayed away. You climb into your car but don't start the engine. Instead, you sit in the stillness and let yourself remember the things Matthew never told them. Like the time you sent money anonymously to cover Dad's emergency dental bill because you knew he'd never take it if it came from you. Or when you called the retirement planner your mother refused to understand and walked them through her entire savings structure twice. Or when you drove 6 hours overnight to deliver medication Matthew forgot to pick up for her and then left before sunrise so they wouldn't know it was you. He never told them any of that. Because none of those things fit the version of you he needed to sell. And why would he risk complicating the story? The story gave him everything. Gave him the house, the heirloom jewelry, the backyard where they used to grill steaks and pretend things were fine. You wonder if it ever occurred to him that all he inherited was a lie. You finally turn the key. The engine hums to life. But you don't go home. You go somewhere else. You drive to the cemetery. You don't know why exactly. Just that something inside you has unfinished business there. The gates are open. A lone groundskeeper waves as you pass. You nod back, unsure why the gesture makes your throat tighten. Their gravestone is easy to find. Simple granite gray with a faint marbling. 2 names carved into it, Eleanor and Richard Green. A pair of dates that bookend lives you never fully understood. And below, survived by their children, Matthew Green and your name. There it is, in stone, without your permission. You stare at it for a long time, like it might blink first. like maybe it'll apologize. But of course it doesn't. Your name sits there etched next to theirs like an obligation, like a last-ditch inclusion just enough to cover the guilt. But it's not yours. You don't feel honored. You feel stolen, because that name doesn't reflect who you are. It reflects the idea of who they wanted you to be. The child who would quietly remain in orbit, who would forgive, who would show up anyway, who would say, it's okay even when it wasn't. They didn't leave you a house. They didn't leave you money. They left you a footnote, a name carved in stone that claims you belonged when they spent most of your life proving otherwise. You reach out and trace your fingers over the letters. Cold. Too clean. Too final. You step back. And then, for the first time, you let yourself say it out loud. No, it's not loud. Not angry. But it lands in your chest like thunder. You turn around and walk back to the car. You have a stop to make. You don't rush. The drive from the cemetery is quiet, deliberate. You take back roads, roads you used to bike down as a kid when getting away meant just riding until your legs ached and your thoughts blurred. Now you're older, the ache is deeper, and the clarity comes slower. But it comes. You stop at a hardware store 2 towns over. Not because you're hiding, though part of you enjoys the anonymity, but because this isn't a moment you want to run into someone from high school during. The guy at the counter doesn't ask questions, just rings you up with a nod and a bored glance. You leave with gloves, a small mallet, a pointed chisel, and a roll of sandpaper. You drive back to the cemetery before dusk, watching the clouds stretch across the sky like a curtain being drawn shut. The gravel crunches beneath your tires. There's no one else around now. No witnesses. Just wind and memory, and that stone waiting for you. You park closer this time. Step out. Pop the trunk. The air is cool and crisp. It carries the faint smell of cut grass and earth. Your hands don't shake. You thought they might. But no. You feel still, not angry. Just done. You kneel beside the gravestone. The bag opens with a quiet zipper. You slip on the gloves. The chisel feels heavier than expected. And then, very carefully, you place the tip just beneath the first letter of your name. The first strike is quiet. You're not carving. You're reclaiming. Not violently, not out of spite. Out of truth. This name, your name, doesn't belong here. Because you were not honored in this place. Because this stone implies something you never agreed to, that you were part of the story, that you were equally loved, equally claimed. You chip away at the curves of each letter one by one. It's slow work. The granite doesn't give easily, but neither do you. You think of every time you sat in silence to keep the peace. Every time you swallowed what you needed just to be easier to deal with. Every time you made space for someone else, hoping they'd notice the sacrifice. They didn't. But you did. Each flick of stone is a syllable they never let you say. You pause to wipe the dust. The name is almost gone now. Not fully, just faint. Like a bruise healing in reverse. You switch to sandpaper. Move in circles. Let your breathing match the rhythm. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. When it's done, you sit back on your heels and stare at the space where your name used to be. Blank now. Unclaimed. Honest. You thought this would feel dramatic, like vengeance, but it feels clean, quiet, right. You reach into your bag and pull out a folded scrap of paper. No speech, no manifeste. Just a note, just enough. You slide it under the flower vase where Matthew will find it one day. It says, you got the house, the accounts, the approval? But this part was mine, and I'm taking it back. Me. You don't sign your name. That's the point. You rise slowly, bones creaking, legs tingling. The sky is soft gray now, lit with the gold edges of early evening. No one speaks. No one claps. No one calls to stop you. It's just you. And for the first time in years, that's enough. You pack up the tools. Zip the bag. Take one last look. And walk away. Not from grief. From the performance of it. Not from family. From the version of it that only knew how to love selectively. You don't cry. You don't smile. You just breathe. Like a free person. The bag of tools sits heavy in your trunk. You don't rush to take it out. You don't drive straight home either. You find yourself pulling off to the shoulder of a quiet road surrounded by nothing but dry grass and sky. The kind of nowhere that feels like a pause button on life. You step out and lean against the hood, letting the evening settle on your shoulders. What now? That question hovers in the air like a moth circling a porch light. Not because you don't know the answer, but because for once, you get to ask it without obligation. No one's waiting. No one's expecting you to fold yourself in half to make the reunion easier. You open your phone, pull up your brother's contact. Your thumb hovers over the screen. You think of that gravestone, of the version of your name that lived there. You press record. Your voice comes out steady, clear. Hey, you'll probably see the gravestone soon. I wanted you to hear it from me. I took my name off it. Not out of spite. Not to hurt anyone. I just don't want to be remembered somewhere I was never really seen. You got the will, the house, the heirlooms. That was always the story. But this, my name, that's mine. Always has been. You pause, then add, tell whatever story you want. I'm not in it anymore. You send it? No flourish, no punctuation. You get back in the car and begin to drive. No destination locked in, but for once that doesn't feel like drifting. It feels like choosing. You pass a sign for the state line and realize you're crossing out of the town you grew up in, maybe for the last time. You whisper a quiet goodbye to it all, to the childhood dinners where silence meant survival, to the birthdays that came with polite smiles and lopsided hugs, to the feeling of being tolerated rather than loved, and to the strange hollow version of you that always tried to make it work. Let them remember you however they need to. You're not there anymore. And what they remember was never really you anyway. You book a last-minute room in a tiny roadside inn, the kind with chipped paint and floral bedspreads that feel like they belong in someone else's story. It suits you tonight. It's quiet, detached, safe. You unpack only what you need: your toothbrush, a clean shirt, your journal. You write one sentence. I have removed myself from the story they wrote without me. Then you close the book. You turn on the small bedside lamp and lay back, watching the shadows on the ceiling move like soft breath. You don't need revenge. You don't need their validation. You don't even need an ending. You just needed to rewrite the one thing they thought they owned. And now, you are your own name, untethered. The next morning, there's a message from Matthew. It's not long. Just a gray bubble on your screen, waiting like a dog outside a door it used to be allowed through. Saw what you did. Not sure what to say. I guess you win. You stare at it for a long time. I guess you win. What a strange response. As if this had ever been a competition. As if your decision to carve yourself out of a legacy that never embraced you was some kind of victory lap. As if your absence on a stone was a power move instead of a boundary drawn in granite. You don't reply. Because the truth is, you don't want to win. You wanted to be seen. And that ship left harbor years ago, dragging behind it all the things you once begged for. What Matthew doesn't understand is that this wasn't about him. It never was. You weren't trying to send a message to him or to the neighbors or to the ghosts lingering in that quiet house. You were just finally claiming your own silence. You check out of the motel after coffee and a shower. The woman at the front desk offers you a lollipop from the candy jar. You say yes. Not because you want one, just because it feels like a kind gesture, one given freely. And that's rare. You drive for hours. The sky changes shades. The road stretches ahead less like an escape and more like a welcome mat. Eventually, you pull off into a small town you've never been to. It has a bookstore, a park, a bakery that smells like warm sugar and cinnamon. You rent a studio for a month, short lease, no pressure. Just a place to be still. The landlord doesn't ask about your past. He cares only that the check clears. You furnish the space slowly. A chair you actually like. A small desk. A thrifted lamp that casts soft golden light in the evenings. You hang nothing on the walls? You've spent a lifetime trying to fit into frames that weren't made for you. One afternoon you find yourself sketching, something you haven't done since high school. Your lines are rusty, but the motion feels familiar, like your hands remember a version of you that was quiet in a different way. The sketchpad becomes your confessional, not for grief, for reclamation, for the parts of you they never saw because they never looked. You think about how much time you wasted hoping they'd change. But the truth, you've changed, and they don't get access to the version of you that grew in their absence. One day, as you walk through the park, you pass a group of people painting on easels, a community class. The instructor notices your interest and invites you to join. You almost say no. Then you remember this life is yours now. You show up the next morning with your own sketchpad. No one knows your last name, and no one cares. You sit among strangers who ask questions like, "What colors make you feel calm?" instead of, "When are you coming home?" You realize you never want to hear that question again. Home isn't a house. Home is the space you've carved by refusing to be claimed. You spend the evening in your studio light, spilling in through the windows, brush in hand, a quiet song playing on a speaker you picked out because you liked the color, not because it matched anything. You paint a name across the bottom of your canvas. Just your first name, nothing else. Not because you're hiding, because it's finally enough. You don't mark the anniversary. It comes and goes quietly. No flowers, no Facebook posts, no obligatory calls to people who expect grief to perform itself on schedule. You wake up that morning, sip your tea, and feel fine. Not empty, not cold, just steady. You walk into town. The barista at the cafe knows your name now, not your family's, not your brother's, yours. She writes it on your cup in neat looping letters. You smile and say thank you. You mean it. On your way out, you pause by the bulletin board near the door. A notice catches your eye. Local Voices Night. Poetry Stories Art. Come as you are. The words feel oddly intimate, like an open hand instead of a spotlight. You take a photo of the flyer, not because you're ready to share, but because maybe someday you will be. You spend that afternoon writing. The words come easier now. Not because you have more to say, but because no one's interrupting them with who they think you should be. You write about names, not just the ones etched in stone, but the ones we whisper to ourselves when no one's listening. The names we grow into when we're finally safe. You write a line that stops you mid-sentence. Sometimes peace is just the absence of needing to explain. You sit with that, because for so long that's all you did. You explained your choices, your absence, your voice, your softness, your silence. You wrote emails that went unanswered. You answered questions no one asked in good faith. You gave and gave and gave, hoping someone would finally say, "You don't have to." But no one ever did. So you did it for yourself. And now you don't explain. Not to Matthew. Not to extended family members who text awkward condolences a year too late. Not to the version of you that still flinches when someone says your name with too much familiarity. Instead, you build. Slowly, quietly, fully. You volunteer at the library once a week. Teach a kid how to use a scanner. Recommend books you once read by flashlight under your blanket when the house was too loud to think. You become a regular at the Saturday farmers market. The woman at the jam stall calls you sweetheart. You let her. You start painting again. Bigger canvases, messier strokes. Nothing that needs to be explained or sold or justified. One night you sketch the gravestone. Not from memory, from truth. It's blank where your name was. You add wildflowers growing along the base. You draw your feet walking away. It's not angry. It's just done. You tuck the sketch into your journal. You don't show it to anyone. You don't need to. You meet someone new a few weeks later. Over soup they ask, "Where's your family from?" You stir your spoon slowly. Look up. Smile. "Not where I am anymore." They nod like they understand. Like they don't need the rest of the story. And for the first time, neither do you. You always thought closure was something someone gave you. A letter. A confession. A moment where the person who hurt you finally says, "I was wrong." But now you know closure is the quiet choice to stop waiting. It's not grand. It's not a finish line. It's a slow, steady breath that says this story doesn't get to own me anymore. One evening you return to the cemetery, not out of longing, not to check on the stone, just to see if the wind still sounds the same between the rows. It does. The trees shift gently overhead. Leaves fall without ceremony. Nothing here tries to be remembered. Everything just is. You walk the path slowly, hands in your pockets, heart beating softly in your chest. No anger this time. No sadness either. Just presence. You stop a few yards before their grave. You don't approach. You don't need to see it again. Your name is gone. That chapter is closed. But the story didn't end there. You reach into your bag and pull out a small envelope. Inside is a photo. A painting you finished last week. It's not of them. It's not of you. It's of an open road painted in soft grays and golds, leading into a forest you've never walked but want to. You place it gently under a nearby rock. Not on their grave. Not near your name. Just close enough to say I made it out. I made something, and it's mine. You turn around and walk back to your car without looking over your shoulder. That's what freedom feels like. Not fire, not fury. Release. You drive home under a sky filled with stars. No calls, no music, just wind and engine and that deep, silent peace that comes when nothing is owed. You arrive at your little studio apartment, the one with the paint-splattered apron hanging by the door, and your name, only your name, on the mailbox. You make tea. You sit by the window, and you start a new canvas. No ghosts. No permission. Just you and the story only you could paint. Word count 1067. Wind down final 300 words. You've carried so much for so long. Invisible weights. Expectations dressed as duty. A hunger for love that was always portioned out like rations, just enough to keep you hopeful, never enough to feel full. But you're not that person anymore. You don't linger at doorways waiting to be invited in. You don't shape yourself into silence just to keep the peace. You don't stand next to gravestones hoping they'll say your name with warmth they never gave you in life. Because now you write your own name in places they'll never touch in paint, in pages, in the small and sacred moments that belong only to you. You have learned that peace is not something anyone can hand you. It's something you claim, in the way you leave a room that never saw you, in the way you speak kindly to yourself when no one else does, in the way you no longer flinch when someone says family, because now you understand family is not who names you. It's who knows you. So tonight lie still, breathe slow, let the old story go. Let it drift into the corners of the dark where forgotten names eventually fade. And feel for once the quiet comfort of needing nothing from the past. Some nights just lying still and breathing softly is enough to return home to yourself. There's a kind of peace that doesn't come from being forgiven or understood or even remembered. It comes from walking away without waiting for the echo. You've done that now. You've stepped out of the role they wrote for you. The one with quiet lines and dim lighting. The one where your worth was measured by how little space you took up. You've seen the gravestone. You saw your name in stone and knew it didn't belong there. Not because you weren't family, but because you were never truly chosen. And now you've chosen yourself. That is the quiet revenge, not bitterness, not fire, not some cinematic reckoning. Just absence, just peace, just your name uncarved, unwritten, unclaimed by anyone but you. Because they don't get to decide your legacy. Not anymore. You've stopped performing grief for an audience that never applauded. You've stopped explaining your story to people who only listened for what they wanted to hear. And in that silence, you've found something sacred. A new kind of home, a new kind of truth. One where you are no longer defined by who left you out, but by what you've built in the space they left behind. So tonight, as the world grows quiet and the sky folds itself into sleep, you don't owe anything to memory. You don't owe anything at all. Let the air move softly through your lungs. Let the night hold you without expectation. Let this new chapter remain unwritten for now, pure and open like morning. Some nights just lying still and breathing softly is enough to return home to yourself.